I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus. Good morning, Bowling Green, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together Rebecca and I are about to craft another amazing hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your families and your coworkers and the birds and the bees and the fish that are under the ice there in Lake Erie and the fish hawks that eat the fish and basically everybody and everything, because all of us are living together on this amazing planet called Earth. And, the longer we look at other planets.
Quite nice.
Yes.
Before we moved in.
Parts of it are still pretty good.
We ain't getting our damage deposit back.
Nope, that's for sure. Wow. So, so we have a good show lined up for you today. It's interesting. We don't have a guest, so what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the situation out there in California, the Palisades. And I really have a question for you folks. And please call in today at 877-909-1007. How has this big fire thing going on out there, how's that affected you? Do you have friends or family who live out there? What do you think of all these images we're seeing of Adelaide completely destroyed? Is this something that has finally managed to strike home that, just how serious this
Adelaide?
is? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say Adelaide?
Yeah, that burned last year.
Oh, sorry.
I know, it's getting hard to remember the difference.
Yeah, what was the name of the town that?
Los Angeles.
Well, yeah, Los Angeles, but one of the cities that's part of the Los Angeles area starts with an A.
Pacific Palisades.
Palisades is the name of the fire. So, anyway, we'll come to that.
Well, actually, a bunch of places have burned at this point. I heard it was heading down the hills for Los Angeles proper. Last I heard.
Yes, and I have all those details in my show notes, which I've forgotten this morning. So we are going. Basically, we're flying along here ad lib today. So. Would really appreciate it.
I really seriously need like a helmet to walk around, a bike helmet or something. I'm not doing well. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So, but we got a great show lined up for you today, and stick around. And I did want to talk a little bit. I wanted to start out talking a little bit about the weather today, which, as you know, we actually have a tiny little bit of snow on the ground here in Toledo, and there's more down south in like Columbus and Dayton and Cincinnati. I guess got
my dog was very happy.
Like a foot of snow. But I just want to remind everybody that this is actually average weather for January, for this time in January. This is not some, outsized cold snap. In fact, according to my cell phone weather app, my Apple weather app, today's temperatures are 1 degree below average.
If you think back a couple years, winter is supposed to be cold.
Yes, and historically it has been,
Yeah.
right? But but remember, December, almost all of December was like 10 to 20 degrees above average for the entire month. So, and that was in keeping with what ended up happening for the entire year of 2024. This was once again, the hottest year in history. That's been confirmed now by the European Space Agency and by NASA.
I know like 2 homeless people who are sleeping in their cars in this crap down south.
Yeah, that's not good.
They're not having a good time.
No. And so we can't forget people in that situation, because actually, frankly, there's more and more of them as time goes on. But global warming affects all of us. That's one thing that this big fire that they had in Palisades has driven home, that global warming is eventually going to destroy everybody's homes. It's burning the homes of millionaires. It's burning the homes of people who are, renting low-income housing. It's burning the people, the people that are living in their cars, have to flee, just like, the people who had houses. And it's a huge, multifaceted disaster down there in California. And again, if I really was hoping people would call in today at 877-909-1007. Jared's watching the phones like a hawk here this morning, because this seems to be the disaster that's kind of tipping the balance for a lot of people. A lot of people have been able to deny global warming because they're just like, oh, it's just another piece of weather.
Well, now it's because Hollywood is so sinful.
Oh, did you hear that? Have you heard that?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Well, Hollywood's been sinful for like a century.
Yeah, it ain't never burned down before. Fatty Arbuckle, boys and girls.
Yeah, he was a piece of work.
Yeah.
Definitely. But yeah, I don't think that's it. I don't think it's like God suddenly said, wait a minute, I'm shocked to discover.
After like a century, I'm becoming upset about this.
There's sin in Hollywood.
Oh, no.
No. So,
poor naive little God.
No, so sorry, fundamentalist Christians, that's not it. It's also not, as I have heard on the conservative radio, I have heard them saying it's the snail darter, or some rare little minnow. Yeah, I know. I'm looking.
Snail darters set fires? Fish? They're blaming us on fish? Seriously?
Well, okay, here, I'll try to follow this reasoning.
Do they like to barbecue a lot? Are they pyrofish?
Pyrofish. Well, all right, here's how it is. And this, I know I say follow this quote-unquote reasoning, but it's a little, it's a little twisty.
We're like deranged chain of associations, but it's a bit quasi-schizophrenic.
Right.
Word salad.
So here's what the conservative media is saying about these fires, trying to twist the whole thing into anti-environmentalism. What they're saying is that the fact that they're running out of water trying to fight these fires is because the water policies of California include a little bit of conservation, include saying you can't completely suck the rivers dry because that would kill all the fish. Right. And so they're saying that trying to reserve that last little drep to try to preserve some fish populations.
I'm guessing they're not even trying to do that right now.
Right now,
I'm
no.
guessing they're just like water. We're using it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm like I say, this is a little twisty. But they're saying that if they had just killed all the fish and
used all the
water,
then there would be water somehow. Magically.
There would be water to fight these fires, and that is false. That's completely false, because the reason there's not enough water is because it hasn't rained in that part of California since April.
I do not even want to slander mentally ill people by associating them with this reasoning.
Right. So yeah, it's not mentally ill. It's just terribly, deliberately wrong.
I think there's some emotional immaturity going on, though. Yeah, I do.
Yes, but I heard that on more than one conservative outlet. And in fact, I actually even heard it from a commentator on one of our stations on WBG in Bowling Green this past week. I happened to be listening to this fella he was doing a kind of a rant on prison policies, which, that's.
Oh, I think I saw him on the bus the other day.
But then all of a sudden he just goes off on this tangent talking about how terrible the snail darter is, and we should just let it go extinct in order to.
They drank all the water, the snails.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
The
Snail
snail
darters.
right,
Okay,
yeah.
they're not.
So
They probably eat snails or something, I'm guessing.
right. So
Okay.
the basic lesson here is that even if they had gone ahead and done that, I mean, maybe you're talking another hour or two's worth of water.
Yeah.
Because the fundamental
little.
problem is global warming. The fundamental
Yeah.
problem is that there has not rained there since
You don't magically get more
April.
water by using more water. That's not how water works. That's not how anything works. That's not
Excellent.
how math or physics work.
Excellent point, Rebecca. Excellent point. And we also have to remember, the fingerprints of global warming are all over this terrible tragedy
Oh,
over
global
there.
warming is just standing there with bloody hands over the corpse at this point. There's no fingerprints.
Oh.
We don't even need to look for fingerprints.
Yeah, that's true. It's not a forensics thing. It's
No.
yeah. So
Global
But-
warming did it live at the the halftime of the Super Bowl.
that's true on camera.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it's very, very clear because not only was this, there's been no rain since April, and this is the rainy season. This is when California is supposed to be getting soaking rains. But what happened is, there's been no rain, and there's never been Santa Ana, dryness and blowing like they've been having there, which is what, of course, sparked these fires that into huge configurations. And now, now I'm going to try to go off my memory here, not my notes, but there's actually 4 really large fires there. There's the Palisades, which is the biggest one, and that's burned like 26,000 acres. The next biggest one is burned like 7,000 acres. And then there's one that's burned about 4,000 and one that's burned about 800. And altogether, they have destroyed, and when I say burned, I mean burned to the ground, an area larger than Manhattan.
There was this clip of that I saw on YouTube of reporters asking the mayor questions, and she looked like she just went catatonic. Like her face just kind of went blank, and she stared into the distance. And I don't think she was faking. I think that she's like on the edge of possibly a psychotic break at this point because she just realized she's the mayor of a giant heap of charcoal.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to press home the point that this is not unique to California. The danger of this kind of dryness followed by wildfires. I mean, we just had a huge drought here in Ohio.
Yeah.
And we did, I have noticed we got all this rain and snow in the past week or two. The Maumee River is back up again, which is nice.
Good.
But, we're not immune. We're obviously not immune. We just had a big drought. We can and will have worse droughts as this global warming proceeds. In fact, one of the things that I wanted to report on was how we have exceeded the 1.6 degrees that all the scientists agreed 20 years ago that we can't exceed. All right. And that almost all the countries in the world, back in the days of Barack Obama agreed we're not going to exceed 1.6 degrees centigrade. And that's what the whole Paris Climate Accord was about. So we just broke it. We just exceeded it.
There are people in North Carolina that I know who are still trying to dig them out because the people up in the hollers, if they survive the winter in tents, are poised to have a bunch of ice dams melt and mudslides come down on them in the spring.
Right.
And now this.
Yeah.
I don't.
And these
It's
disasters.
eventually going to get to the point where we're on our own and we just got to watch it burn.
Well, and that was actually going to be one of the stories I talked about in the second half of the show.
Okay.
Uh,
We're doing that. We're there already. Never mind.
No, we'll come back to it.
Okay.
Because I will find it on
Great.
my show notes on my phone. But basically, what's happening in conjunction with all these natural disasters, or as the insurance companies call them, the NatCats, natural catastrophes. Insurance companies are abandoning huge swaths of the country, of the continent. So then, people really are on their own at that point. And in fact, part of what happened with this Palisades is State Farm Insurance literally 1 month ago canceled the fire insurance.
State Farm is not there, boys and girls.
Yeah, for a huge chunk, something like 80% of those houses that just burned down had fire insurance up until last month. And State Farm was looking at the weather and was like, this is crazy. There's going to be a huge fire here. And they got out. So State Farm saved billions, but that means those people now have no way to actually rebuild. So we're gonna come back to that. But I do have some actual numbers here from NBC News story that was just today. So 37,000 acres in the greater Los Angeles areas. 12,000 structures have been destroyed, and at least 13 people are missing. 16 people are dead, and so the fire right now at this point is only 11% contained, and there's still 150,000 people under evacuation orders. There's still something like 250,000 people without power, both because people lost power because the transmission lines burned down, and because in some places the utilities have cut off power in order to prevent more fires from starting, because there's still no rain. So as long as the winds keep going and it stays dry, any spark off of any transformer or off any insulator on a high tension line could start another huge fire like
because
this.
we know from classic pop music that it never rains in Southern California, or not very much anyway.
Well, but it does rain more than it is right now, right? As I said before, this is supposed to be.
Now it really, really never rains.
Right. This is supposed to be the
almost.
rainy season. So, So, once again, I'm one reason I didn't actually. I tried to get a guest for this week, but I wasn't trying super hard because I really would like to hear from you folks this week. Is this the disaster which has finally pushed you over the line into, okay, global warming is a serious thing? And what, if anything, are you personally doing to help fight global warming? I mean, have you, it's one thing to admit it, okay, and, lots of people actually have been admitting it since way back in 2000. I remember, it was an issue in the 2000 presidential election. George Bush, Al Gore, both talked about it. Both said they were going to do something about it. Bush got elected, and of course he was lying. But, it was something at that point, like 80% of Americans accepted the fact that global warming was real, and we had to do something about it. We didn't under Bush, and we didn't, of course, under Trump, and we're doing some things. There is a one good story here under Biden, not nearly enough, and we're often doing the wrong things under Biden, but we're doing something. But what about you? What about you personally? Have you taken literally anything? Has this idea that, okay, it's happening, we've got to do something about it, by we, does that mean you? Does that include I? Can you give me an example of something you've done to help us avert the crisis of global warming? So anyway, 877-909-1007. So back to this, I do have the article about the insurance company. So yeah, we say at the start of every show that we're going to tell you about how this affects your wealth, your health, your happiness. This is a wealth one. I mean, you can't get more direct impact on your personal wealth than being unable to get insurance and having your house destroyed.
Also, homeless and not great for your health or happiness.
Right. So This is an article in Anthropocene magazine, and the date was December 28th. And as I said, insurance companies call these huge things that have more than $1 billion damage, they call them nat cats. Oh, and another factoid about the Palisades fire.
Sounds very jazzy.
Yeah, it does. It sounds like a cool thing. Hey, nat cat. But it's really...
It's not.
Yeah, it's like nasty. Maybe they should call them nasty cats.
It's just wildly unsubtle, non-improvisatory, just overwhelming force.
Right. So as of September of 2024, there had been 51 nat cat disasters in the U.S. So that's 51, storms, fires, floods that caused more than $1 billion damage in the United States. And that didn't even include Hurricane Milton at that point. So they have a graph in this article from Anthropocene that shows the number of $1 billion events. And if you go back to 2014, we were having 33 a year, and then it increases steadily. 41 in 2016, 48 in 2018, 49 in 2020, and then 2023 had 65 of these nat cats. And insurance companies are having a big problem keeping up with them. And in fact, so they are starting to drop insurance or charge outrageous amounts. So like in Florida, you might be able to get flood insurance, for example, or storm insurance, but it's going to cost you more than $1,000 a month. You're going to be paying like $12,000 a year just for your insurance. And for some houses, that's more than the mortgage, right? And so, on average, this is the average, is $11,000 a year. And so...
At that point, just get you a nice RV and live in it, if you're going to live in Florida.
Well, it's a point,
Yeah.
I mean, that is one way to respond to this, But, so in the U.S., about 13% of homes have no insurance. But in Florida, it's 40% that have zero insurance. So the next hurricane that comes through, the house will be destroyed and there'll be no money to rebuild it.
And then we'll see whether the alligators or the pythons will win in Florida.
Yeah. And
because it'll be just them.
And I do want to pick on Florida a little bit because, well, just actually a lot, because remember, that is a Florida which is completely controlled by Republicans who deny global warming, who've made it illegal for the state government to even talk about global warming or take into account global warming because they've legislated away global warming. They've said in law in Florida global warming doesn't exist.
Why didn't we think of that?
Yeah, I know. But so people save tax money down there in Florida because, that's what they're all about, is cutting taxes. But if you have to pay $12,000-$14,000 a year for your insurance, doesn't matter much that you don't have to pay $1,500 in personal income tax, right? You're paying 10 times as much to the insurance companies because your state government refuses to deal with the actual problems that are destroying your houses and your neighbors'
So
houses.
it's just going to be Trump and the Gators, basically.
Yeah.
You can live there.
It's a bad thing. So anyway, this Anthropocene article points out that when the going gets tough, insurers go away. And they give some possible solutions. One is to create a insurer of last resort, which turns out to be the government. So have government insurance because theoretically governments have, infinite supplies of money. But another point I wanted to make about the Palisades is a lot of these homes were built back in the 20th century, right? In fact, the majority of them were built before 1980. And most of the first part of the 20th century, what they were building the houses of Southern California with were the redwood forests of Northern California. So if you go down there, a redwood ranch house was considered like you've made it financially. You've achieved middle class status if you can have your dream redwood house, and they use the redwoods down there for everything, for funeral caskets and furniture, and so a lot of those homes that burned down this past week were made from the redwood forests of Northern California, which are now gone because we cut them down. The only redwood forests are left with old growth redwood are the protected areas, the reserves, the parks, and
replaced with eucalyptus, which burns like crazy.
Yes, and the hills of Southern California are covered with
Yay.
the eucalyptus, which is the firebomb tree filled with eucalyptus oil that you put a spark on it and it just explodes. And so,
I'm so sorry. I'm laughing, but I know people, including me, who have relatives in California. This is kind of how I cope, but I am really genuinely appalled and experiencing some grief here. I wanted to see Santa Monica Pier, or no, I wanted to see Venice Beach, and I wanted to see Laurel Canyon.
right,
I think those two things are probably gone.
right. So this disaster, in a way that I think other ones haven't yet, is driving home the idea that global warming is going to cost you personally money. It's going to affect you, your pocketbook. And we have some more examples of that in the second half of the show and with our news stories. But back to this article at the Anthropocene. Another solution they're saying is resilience discounts. In Alabama, they were having a lot of houses that were being damaged by winds and storms. And so the state government mandated that if householders protected their house, wind-proofed their house, basically made it stronger, did certain things that prevented wind damage, then the insurers had to give them discounts on their home insurance. So it made it cheaper to insure their house, not more expensive. And at first the insurance companies were resisting this, like, we can't give discounts. But once this actually went into place, the insurance companies embraced it because they realized now we don't have to make so many payouts. It ended up saving them a ton of money. And 80% of the fortified houses in the country now are actually in Alabama. So that is another thing that we can do, is step in and mandate housing protection. But the thing is that ultimately these won't work unless we solve the basic problem, unless we stop putting CO2 into the air, unless we stop making global warming worse. And so once again, I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna keep going through the whole hour here, and just ask: have you done anything? Do you plan to do anything? Have you insulated your house? Have you got energy efficient windows? Maybe you've put in geothermal heating. Okay, you would like to hear stories from somebody who did that. Give us a call, 877-909-1007. So, look at that, Rebecca. We got through the first half hour without any notes. Amazing.
Yay.
Okay, so this brings us to the portion of the show where we thank our patrons. Thank you so much to the people who have gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. They searched for a Green Future on Patreon. Up came our Patreon page, and people picked a membership level that matched their budget, and from that membership level, that's how we can keep this show on the air. So we are very grateful to them, because this information, I don't hear this conversation happening anywhere else in the media, frankly. So I'm glad we're here to do it with you, and I'm grateful to our patrons for doing it, to making that possible. All right, Rebecca. So that gives us a chance to hear from you. This is your chance to take the mic.
Okie dokie. Well, bearing in mind that I will probably make a pun with my last breath, with everyone expiring around me, I'm calling this segment Santa Ana Catabatic Extra Calatrocious.
Oh, wow.
I worked on that. So it's about the Santa Ana winds, in case you didn't catch that.
All right.
They are a big prolonged weather pattern, a wind, essentially, prolonged dry, hot wind that sweeps down from the deserts. Actually, they start in the Great Basin up in Nevada. And they sweep through the deserts, pick up some heat, including the Mojave, the Great Basin, and the Colorado. I could not tell for sure, but it seems like most of the deserts in California are located in the California desert region.
Makes sense.
Poetically
Makes sense, yeah.
named, yeah. A little on the nose, but okay. Yeah, and they just sweep all the way across coastal California, pushing smoke and dust far out into the ocean, which is good because that's the only reason why there isn't like killer smog all the time there. They're also known as the devil winds. They are a katabatic wind, which is a Greek word for downslope winds. And okay, this happens. I tried very hard to understand this. I may have come close. Apparently, Nevada is quite a bit higher than California, so the reason they sink is because there's a high density air mass, which is usually cold, and so they're coming from higher ground. They sweep down the mountains. Apparently, I don't know how they get over the mountains. Maybe they happen up in the mountains. I don't know. Anyway, they sweep down into the rain shadow desert region, pick up heat there, and they're flowing into the lower density air mass below, propelled by gravity. Who knew? So most katabatic winds are cold. This one, not so much, apparently. I'm guessing the desert heats it up. I don't know. Anyone who want to correct me, feel free. They affect pretty much most of California and and North Baja California in Mexico also. And the Great Basin is basically in Nevada and Utah, as far as I could tell. They used to anyway occur mostly in autumn, but they can occur any time. They create hot, dry conditions and fan destructive wildfires. How about that? And one of the windiest areas is Santa Ana in Orange County, one of the most seriously affected, not where they come from, but where they do the most damage, apparently a lot. So that is why they are called the Santa Ana winds after, I don't know, it's either the Mexican general or the Virgin Mary's mama. I don't know. One of the two. So they're rumored to have bad mental health effects, sort of like, the full moon or whatever. They seem to just generally make people irritable, which I guess they would if there was dry, dusty wind blowing on you for days. It's unpleasant. People don't like it. And they occur 10 to 25 times per year. They last 1 to 7 days, an average of 3. And one time in 1957, there was a 14-day event. Uh-oh.
Wow.
Let's hope that's not going to happen again. Although, this would be the time for it. Anyway, the Sierra Nevada range is the one that's between Nevada and California. And I looked it up because I was trying to figure out, how is this sinking? It's a mountain. I don't understand. How are they getting over the mountains? But Lake Tahoe, which I think part of it is in California and part is Nevada.
Sounds right.
Yeah, it's like an average of 6,225 feet above sea level, whereas the Mojave Desert, which is right on the other side of the mountains from that, I think, is between 2,000 and 5,000 feet. And the Colorado Desert is 23 to 1,000 feet. So, it sinks quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it pops up over the mountains, and then it basically comes down the mountains, and it expands as it goes.
Just like it's hopping over a little speed bump.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's pretty powerful, which is jives with what everyone says.
Well, I think a lot of people, I kind of thought, I knew they had to do with the ocean. I kind of thought they came off the ocean.
They
but
do not. No.
They go into the ocean.
Yeah.
So
they're dry. That's your clue. They're not coming from the ocean.
All right. Well, thank you very much for teaching us about those Santa Ana winds.
Willkommen.
Which they're about to have another batch of them tonight, actually.
No,
so they're
please.
expecting this to hit an even larger area in California because the
Mother
last
Nature, we do not deserve a break, but please give us one anyway.
last Tuesdays, when these fires started, those Santa Ana winds were like 105 miles an hour. The ones that are going to happen tonight, they're saying are like 75 to 80. So not quite as severe, but still plenty severe enough to cause problems. All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
So now continuing our ecological news story, which we kind of sort of went into in the first part of the show. Start out with a good story, good news story. This is from Clean Technica on December 27th. China hits their EV target, electric vehicle target, 10 years early. Still hasn't reached 2020 nuclear target. And this is a story by a fellow named Michael Bernard. And he basically is pointing out that China has the goals of becoming a carbon-free economy, and they're working towards it. And one of the objectives in that goal was to increase the percentage of electric vehicle sales. And so what happened is that they had a goal that to get to that point, to have 50% of the cars sold, new cars being sold, be EVs by 2035. And instead, that's going to happen this year, 2025. So they got to 50% EVs in roughly half the time they thought they would, mostly because people, once you go EV, you don't go back. Okay. There's rumors on the internet that, EV owners are dissatisfied, and no. Worldwide, the percentage is like 98%, 95, 98 who bought an EV say they're going to buy an EV for the next time. In the U.S., it's a little different because we have the highest level of misinformation about electric vehicles in the world on our social media. But in China, they don't have that, and they're just realizing, hey, there's almost no maintenance costs. Hey, I can get to and from, work for a fraction of the cost as if I was using gas. And so they've achieved the 50% level in half the time they expected to. And it's accelerating. They're gonna get to 100%. Like Norway is at like 98 point something percent electric vehicles, all electric vehicles already. And China's going to get there way faster, which is going to slash their air pollution. And, it's going to save the individual Chinese car owner a ton of money. But then in this article in Clean Technica, he contrasts that with nuclear. And in China, they had a goal to achieve by 2020. Okay, 5 years ago, they expected to have 58 gigawatts of nuclear. And here we are, 2025, they still haven't made it. They're still under 57 gigawatts. And what he is pointing out is that if China can't do it, and China's a country which has built incredible numbers of railroads and roads and huge, complicated bridges, massive infrastructure over the past 10 years, they haven't been able to scale up the nukes to the way they want, because nuclear power is inherently inefficient, and inherently it takes a long time. It's complicated, and it's stupid. Because while the nuclear capacity has reached, is still under 27 gigawatts, in that same time period, wind energy has gone up to over 300 gigawatts. Okay, so wind energy is now produces basically almost 33% of the power there. In 2025, they're expecting 33% of electricity to come from renewables, wind and solar, and nuclear is only going to provide less than 1.6%. So in this article, he calls nuclear a rounding error in China's energy policies, because
It's an error, all right.
yeah, it's all kinds of errors. China this year is going to achieve 3.3 trillion kilowatt hours of power from wind and solar ahead of schedule, ahead of their plan to go carbon free. And in fact, in 2025, renewables are going to provide China with 53.8% of their installed capacity, and 33%, as I said. So over half their capacity and over a third of their actual electricity generated. So basically, he's saying that if China can't do it, there's no hope that the rest of the world is going to do it. And so all these huge press releases talking about gigantic corporations that have signed contracts for nuclear power plants, which don't exist yet. He's pointing out that a lot of those nuclear power plants will never exist because it simply takes too long, and it's too expensive, and it's too complicated, and it's too stupid. So good on China for starting to head that way. Now they're still, of course, building too much coal. They're still the world's largest carbon emitter by far. So this is not a purely feel-good story, but at least they're moving in the right direction now. And switching to EVs this quickly is going to make a huge dent in their carbon emissions. So that's some good news. All right, now for some bad news right here in Ohio. A farm in Darke County, Ohio, which is on the western border, right about in the middle of the state, so just south of us here, Toledo. A farm with about 1 million chickens has discovered bird flu.
Ooh, I heard about that.
Yes, and so they're going to exterminate 1 million chickens. And they don't give a lot of detail. They don't name the farm. They just say that it's, this is according to the National Veterinary Services Laboratory. And so, but I did want to mention this because if you're a regular listener to the show, you'll remember that over the past couple years, we've been reporting on bird flu outbreaks that have decimated wild bird populations, right? I remember we did one story that there was an island with cormorants that like thousands of cormorants died of bird flu, and then seagulls. You remember those stories we've been covering for the past couple of years?
I do, yeah, and I'm freaked out because like dogs can get it.
Yeah,
But
dogs
I don't really
get it.
care whether I die that much. Not my dog though.
But the point I wanted to make is that, when we were reporting on this, when this was just a purely, quote, environmental story, unquote. But what happens with ecology is that we are part of that ecology. So when we were reporting, hey, it's happening to these wild birds, it was inevitable that it would start happening to the domestic birds, And so now those birds have come home to roost, so to speak, because what this is doing, when you take 1 million chickens out of the poultry production and the egg production, this is why egg prices are going through the roof. And so when Trump promises to bring down the cost of eggs...
Just when I got it together and started making scrambled eggs for breakfast.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But so Trump has promised to bring down the cost of eggs, but it's going to be physically impossible to do that if you're having to kill off 1 million chickens at a time. And that's what's happening all over the country. This bird flu is not isolated in Ohio. It's all over North America, basically. And so the science of ecology has trumped the politics of Trump. So he's made an empty promise here that he's going to bring down egg prices because there's just not going to be that many eggs around for a while until this bird flu burns itself out.
Okay, I found something that's contradictory but supports your idea of the wind coming off the Pacific. It says here in the Deserts of California article in Wikipedia, it says, when prevailing winds from the Pacific Ocean rise and go over the Sierra, the air cools and loses most of its moisture as rain by the time the winds cross over the mountains and sweep down the far side. They are very dry and absorb moisture from the surrounding area. This drying effect is responsible for creating the Great Basin Desert. Huh? Because the other one said that the stuff forms in the Great Basin, not the Great Basin Desert. I don't understand.
Okay, well, but
we need a climatologist, stat.
All right, we'll get one. But the basic idea is that when it goes over the mountains, it loses its moisture, becomes hot and dry, and then blows over the California and triggers these fires. So
the soils of California desert also tend to be alkaline, which adds to the stress of drought on plants. Okay.
Okay. All right. So, well, that was our story about the farm in Darke County that shall not be named. Next story, kind of a nice one, an optimistic one. Okay, and this was actually in Popular Mechanics, and what this title of this story is: the battery that will finally unlock massless energy storage. It could revolutionize electric vehicles and aircraft. And essentially, they've had a breakthrough in massless battery storage, 10 times better. And essentially, what these are what they call structural batteries. And so that means that literally the structure of the thing is the battery. So like if you have an airplane, like the wings and the frame, those themselves store the energy. So you don't need separate batteries to do it because the plane or the car is physically storing it in their own structure. Then it really reduces the weight, and so it increases the efficiency. And so these scientists made a breakthrough and found they could do this using composite materials, and they've improved the performance by a factor of 10. And so this was done by scientists at Chalmers University of Technology and the KTH Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden. And essentially, this could be the battery of the future. Might not be a battery at all. The battery of the future might be the car itself. So that's a nice story. How are we doing for time there? We're doing pretty good. Next story. This is a real kind of a whipsaw episode of ecological news. We're going good, bad, good, bad.
Ooh, I found something else. The Mojave is considered to be a high desert, and it gets more rain than the Colorado. So it's coming down from the desert. You always think of deserts as low. This one isn't.
But these are mountains that are deserts that are up in the mountains. So yeah.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah. Okay, so January 3rd, a statement by the organization Save Ohio Parks, which we've had Randy Poklodnik, who was part of that organization, on the show before. But there was an explosion at a fracking well. This is a fracking well that was near the Salt Fork State Park near Antrim, Ohio. And at 5:49 p.m., the fracking pad exploded. And this is a fracking installation that's only 5.7 miles from Salt Fork State Park. Flames 100 feet in the air, 2 big fracking storage tanks, and the firefighters decided that instead of risking their lives trying to put it out, they would just let it burn out. And so for, like a day, there were tremendous flames going there, putting tons and tons of CO2 in the air and tons of methane, because when you explode a fracking well, it's not a nice, neat, it all changes to CO2. No, you get a big mix of CO2.
Splatters everywhere.
Yeah, and it splatters, and there's the fracking waste, the brine gets sprayed all over the place. This is a fracking pad that was owned by a company called Gulfport, and it has, according to these folks at Save Ohio's Parks, they say the Gulfport has the worst environmental track record of any of the companies doing fracking in Ohio. But that hasn't stopped the state of government from giving Gulfport, in the last couple of years, they got 7 fracking contracts, 7 bids to frack public land. In other words, we've reported on this before that Governor DeWine has allowed fracking in our state parks. And so they have given, there's public lands being given in places like Monroe County, Belmont County, and there's one, a particularly egregious one. They gave them 30 acres of the Egypt Valley Wildlife Area in Belmont County and said, we know it's a wildlife area, but, fracking's more important. And so they've put this pad there, and Gulfport has gotten many accidents over the years, many fines, $250,000 fine in 2013, 2016, 5,000 gallons of fracking waste brine got dumped into a local stream near Barnesville. 2019, an unknown amount of drilling brine waste was released from the Loyster well pad in Harrison County, and in the wells around that one, they found radium, or radioactive radium, which is one of the things that comes up out of the ground when you put this fracking brine down into the ground. It brings radium back up, which is quite deadly, causes lung cancer. It's really nasty stuff. You don't want to breathe it or drink it or bathe in it. So bad news, but inevitable news. As long as we continue fracking, we will continue to have fracking well explosions. I mean, they just happen. And so the answer is not just better regulations. The answer is to stop fracking. And this is something I mentioned last week when we were talking about Shell Oil attacking Greenpeace. All these companies, the Gulfport Corporation has to die. Exxon has to die. Shell Oil has to die. We have to get rid of these corporations if we don't want to follow what's happened over there in the Palisades region of California.
Okay, but here it says,
Oh.
okay, I'm sorry, I'm being obsessed. I might have some autistic traits to go with my ADHD. But yeah, Death Valley also contains the Badwater Basin, the lowest point in the U.S. in the northern Mojave.
Okay, yes, Death
So-
Valley is the lowest point in the U.S., right?
But it's in the Mojave, which is a high desert. All right,
Yes.
whatever, California, whatever.
Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Rebecca seems to be kind of focused on something there. All right, so
I'm a little obsessed, sorry.
yeah. All right, so that's it for that story from our friends at Save Ohio Parks. And really, if you care about parks, you got to start reflecting this in the way you vote, because the way it's going now, all our parks are going to become fracking pads, and all our wildlife will be sacrificed to these terrible things, which are killing us. That's the whole thing. Is people might be thinking, oh, fracking, well, that means natural gas, and oh, I'm heating my house with natural gas. Yes, but that has to change. You have to stop heating your house with natural gas, and it will happen one way or the other. Either we're going to do this consciously and in a controlled way and in a way that doesn't destroy everybody's livelihood, or it will happen the way it's happening in Altadena. That's the name of the town. Altadena.
Oh,
yes.
yeah. That's right.
Which I was watching one of the reportings, one of the reporters standing in front of a burned out house in Altadena, and I could tell there was a fire still burning in that house behind them, and I could tell from the way it was burning that what had happened is the natural gas line going into that house had ignited and was burning, because it was a nice steady flame.
They'll kill your parrots too if you have if anything goes wrong with your stove. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's true. If you like, but natural gas is the problem,
Right.
So she's standing in
Parrot
front of a
killer.
house that was destroyed by global warming, even as the natural gas that caused the global warming was continuing to pour out of that house. So I have natural gas myself, but as soon as I could afford it, and I'm hoping this year, if I don't get hit by any more huge expenses like I did last year, I'm hoping this year to make the transition to geothermal, because it's, as we keep pressing again and again, it's better. It's cheaper, it's cleaner, it's better in every measurable way to heat your house with geothermal than it is to heat your house with gas. But most of us have got to the point where we accept that it's real, but we have not got to the point where we think, oh, I personally have to do something to change it. And that's really the purpose of this whole show, is to get everybody to that second point. All right. But as this next story says, that is difficult because we're fighting disinformation, and it's not just in the United States. In The Guardian on this past month, on January 3rd, there's a story, heat pumps. They've heard so much wrong information selling heat pumps across Germany's political divide. And what has happened is the right in Germany, the right-wing political people, have seized on heat pumps and global warming as a political tool, a political toy, political football, and they're just telling tons of lies about geothermal heating to try to prevent people from doing it, and in order to get votes, because people don't want to hear you've got to change your furnace. Who wants to hear that? I certainly don't. But they're just putting out lies. They're saying they don't work when it gets cold, which is a lie. In fact, most heat pumps are installed in the northernmost countries. Canada has tons of heat pumps. Norway, Sweden, the coldest countries in the world are the ones that have the most heat pumps.
And you're not really seeing headlines saying mass failure of heat pumps in cold snap, are you?
No, exactly. The heat in the ground does not run low. It's always there. And that's why,
it's more the nuclear plant shut down randomly.
Yes.
And froze everybody to death.
Yeah. At least once a week in the U.S., the nuke plant crashes.
Right.
But the heat stored in the ground around your house will not crash. It's very steady, very predictable. And so, and it's the price of it's not going to fluctuate either, because you're literally harvesting the heat in the earth around your own house. And so you have secured your supply already. You don't have to worry about getting the fracked gas from the state parks, or even from Australia or wherever fracked gas gets imported from. You've got it at home. So we're not alone in fighting the disinformation. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of the show already. Gosh. All right. So I wanted to end on a good note, and I've actually got two, so I'll only get to one this week, but I'll do the next one next week. And that is Biden has banned new oil drilling over vast areas of the Atlantic and Pacific. And it's really a great area. Almost the entire east coast of the United States now has banned new oil and gas drilling. And he's using a trick, a legislative trick that means that Trump won't be able to just reverse it. It's not what they call an executive order.
Finally.
It's using a law that governs the continental shelf. And so 270 million acres have been protected. And, of course, this is Biden, so he couldn't do it perfectly. He opened up the central and western Gulf of Mexico, so there'll be more drilling there. But at least he banned it all along the East Coast, parts of Oregon and Washington, the eastern part of Gulf of Mexico around Florida, all banned from future gas and oil drilling, which is what we need to do in order to not become like Palisades, California. So hope you enjoyed that. I hear the music. We made it. A whole show without notes. Gosh. Thank you so much for listening. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
I don't want no oil spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!